military action of Washington in Venezuela. There have been statements made by the Russian Foreign Ministry who are in solidarity with Havana in the conditions of this forceful pressure. We will further support the brotherly people of Cuba. I would like to announce that the talks will start with introductory statements. They will be broadcast in social media accounts and Russian Foreign Ministry online resources. Now let us go on to international agenda, and I will start not with the issue of Ukraine, as according to our tradition, but the Munich conference that has caused a lot of feedback. It's actually regarding the security policy, but it's a deception because the title does not correspond. Regarding the organizers of this event, we have made our comments and we would like to provide our assessments of what has happened in Munich. It was the 62nd conference, so it has history, held starting from February the 13th in Germany. But the tendency is confirmed of the Munich conference losing its status as a platform for discussions on the problems facing the world. Before, it used to be a platform for dialogue. When countries of global majority and not of global majority came there, they had an opportunity to make assessments. But now the opinion, our country has its right for the opinion. The opinions are blocked or somehow erased. So literally the dialogue was being destroyed before our eyes, and it was impossible to make a statement. It even came as far as noise. It was not something that was not allowed, but they just did not want to hear that. The organizers did not want to hear that and did not want others to hear that. Then it became some show, you know, just those passports, bricks that the Kiev regime brought, and they were not asked questions. And seriously, the curators of the Munich conference, they did not even try to talk to the Kiev regime. But now the situation went further, even better to say deeper. It was not only the basis, but it was time for this conference that allegedly deals with international security to talk about international terrorism that is now being developed and that just affects the European continent. And the Kiev regime is engaged in the spreading of weapons, illegally spreading weapons. It's just beastly corruption that nurtures all this terrorist, horrible tragedy for the victims. And for the Kiev regime, it's just a crime, actually a crime. So it's just a good occasion to talk about that. For decades, during the Munich conference, they discussed terrorism, they discussed ISIL and so on and so forth, but now nothing has been said seriously, even briefly, nothing has been mentioned. And the issue that is now seems to be just primary now, the Palestine settlement. It used to be of great interest to the West, but now such American initiatives, they could have been discussed, but no. So what was that? Well, this year we saw in Munich just disputes within the Western communities. So dialogue or political scientists representing different points of view in the world. We just saw the just internal dispute. And some time ago, it used to be aggressive with regard to other centers of power like Russia and China. Now it has turned out that they started to argue before the eyes of the surprised public. It was not a surprise actually for us. It was not surprising because we just predicted how the situation will develop. And the existence of this conference that will stage by stage abolish those principles on the basis of which it has been created. We were not surprised that in order to erase internal contradictions, the Western participants in the conference, they were looking for external enemies, not from the point of view of the analysis of the reality, but some commercial actions. Like some propaganda. When they found external enemies, they started to accuse them of destruction of the rules-based order so dear to European and American globalists that no one has seen, has witnessed, and it would be not a bad idea to formulate it somewhere. For several years, I think around 7 years, 6-7 years started before the pandemics. The Russian Federation, in all the levels, asked those questions regarding Western mainstream. What are those rules they want to build their order on the basis of what? We just softly and then more and more actively made hints that it will just fail. It's impossible to build on the principles they do not have any idea about themselves. Maybe only one rule, the rule of the right of the strong. Now in Munich, instead of saying that Russia, it was right, and the president of the Russian Federation just had warned us, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation also here at the Munich conference just lectured us on that, and we did not hear his lectures. And there is no rules-based world order. They're just like an Andersen fairy tale about a naked king. They saw themselves and they started to cry that they are naked. It's probably not the final stage, because when they will look at the mirror, they will see the reflection. It brings us back to this quotation by the president of the Russian Federation. And now let us see what happened at that Munich conference. The forum in Davos marked an end of an era in international relations, and the Munich conference marked the end of transatlantic unity. Why? We have mentioned that today, because they quarreled with each other before the eyes of the global majority. They have never respected that majority. They taught it. They thought that it is not developed enough, the global majority. And the conclusions made by political scientists, they do not have the right to be 100% exact, but in essence, it's difficult not to agree with them. The discussions that took place in Munich, this discussion is useful, but from a practical foreign policy perspective, it is secondary. It is important to know what the narratives there are, but we will base our foreign policy it will be based on our domestic interests. The discussion was on the issues that concern the global majority. So what are those issues? Let us name them. For several years, we have seen a horrible tragedy in the Middle East. Apart from the fate of the Palestinians, there is a number of acute international crises in the Middle East created directly by the West with their curators. Crises in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, they have created, they are still not resolved. And the situation in the global economy, they have provoked with their decades of sanctions, trade wars, illegal, illegitimate measures of putting obstacles to the development of other countries. And they have destroyed the free market. The Westerners have destroyed it. We can also discuss that, organize some round table. How they managed that? They talked about making economy more liberal, self-regulated, and then lead the world through globalization, and then find ourselves in a situation of destruction of the basement on which they had built global economic relations. And destroying those pillars by their own hands, not by terrorists. Now the situation in international security that has come to a very dangerous point due to a complex set of interrelated factors. The end of operation of the latest strategic arms limitation treaty, and there is a whole range of acute international issues that need to be discussed. In terms of thematic content, the Munich Conference, it's just very weak, and it is losing to such forums as the Sorbaniyas Forum in the UAE, the entire diplomatic forum held in Turkey, the Doha Forum organized in Qatar. It's losing to those platforms. And I would like to also mention the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that has become a universal platform where really global problems are discussed, as well as the Eastern Economic Forum and, of course, the Valdai Discussion Club Conference. So issues are discussed that are just in accordance with the current situation. And what we have witnessed during the recent Munich Security Conference, this situation testifies of the lack of the desire to see the reality. During the pandemics, they just were discussing how to put obstacles to the development of China and Russia, but people suffered from COVID-19. It was not studied enough back then. But the security, they were trying to discuss it somehow without any connection to the situation on the planet. So it's the lack of a desire or just strong desire to ignore the reality. It leads to self-destruction, what they are doing or what they were doing at the Munich conference this year. Let me quote one example. We will come back to the Munich conference, how they ignore this reality. Just have a look. At the end of February this year, the annual report by Norwegian Special Services, Intelligence Services was presented, and counterintelligence of Norway. It has a lot of groundless accusations of our country, accusations of creating a whole range of threats. This time it's no exception. It's just one of the bricks of that road on which the Western community is walking, just refusing to admit the actual situation. According to those intelligence services, Russia is a source of immediate risks for Norway, European security, and the Western world order, as they put it. And during the Munich conference, also attended by Norway, they stated that their world order, rules-based world order, it does not exist. It just collapsed or was not built because everything was given to the Kiev regime as assistance. And how is Russia accused of being a threat to Western world order? And them simultaneously stating that they have not succeeded in building that world order. So any reaction to just actual threats, there is no such reaction. For example, environmental threats, it's lacking. Notably, they mention the interests of Russia and China in weakening the Transatlantic alliance amid the disagreements over Greenland. So how are Russia and China engaged here in the context of Greenland and this transatlantic alliance of Russia and China? How did Russia and China influence the crisis situation in transatlantics? What have we done? We were not engaged in that. It's their problems. They created them themselves. They have a lot of claims, accusations against each other, stated directly or indirectly. So it's just ignoring the actual facts in favor of current situational interests. It's about Greenland, Ukrainian conflict, and the Nord Stream pipeline terror attacks. So it's they are not interested in actual facts and figures. It's just narratives about the rules-based world order. They are starting to forget about that and to abandon this meme, but other issues are still alive and on the agenda. It's just about Russia. They mention Russia's activities in different spheres of activity. The work of our embassy in Oslo, scientific vessels and fishing vessels, there are insinuations that there is the influence of the Kremlin everywhere. They have such illusions. Sanctions against Russian fishing companies, Norebo and Murmansk Seafood, under the pretext of their involvement in intelligence activities. Those sanctions are absurd. What else have they invented? What other ideas are in the offing? So Oslo's actions are not in accordance with the long-term interests of either Russia or Norway, and their centricity. It does not have any relation to the reality. The use of some illusory narratives and the texts they are based on, and then they find themselves in the place that according to the NATO drills in the Baltic states, the Brussels military chiefs mentioned. And in this report, there are statements about the engagement of Russia. It's a very popular instrument of manipulation and intimidation of the population in Norway in order to justify their own problems or militaristic expenses, taxes, and expanding the powers of the intelligence agencies. So that's they are talking about it because they have been ordered by some of their curators or so-called allies in that transatlantic link. They just invent those statements that Russia makes them knows about Russia and China. So that's how the distorted reality is created with just illusionary threats, with aggressive plans that do not exist. So this illusionary picture is just stuck to the walls of the Munich Conference on the issues of policy, security policy, in order for it to be more comfortable to state the end of the world order, the world order that is based on the non-existent rules. They just need to appeal to the issue of Russophobia in order to explain on the failures and the lack of logics in their actions. And now, at this moment, the Munich Conference has become a parade of such ideas and tactics. And in the context of the issue of Norway and Arctic, we are against the escalation in the Arctic region and the preservation of this region as a space for international cooperation and peace. You know, we will come back to the issue of Munich. I would like to say a few words about the Arctic. There are a lot of statements about that, a lot of articles, comments, and our colleagues that just make confrontational statements. This region is used in their narratives as a conflict potential zone. Our counterparts, it's their habit already to justify nearly any actions by Russia, to qualify them as threats. So once again, in the context of what we have mentioned now, the reports of Norway intelligence services, the comments we have made, because the alleged Russian threat in the Arctic has been mentioned on many occasions in recent days. As a major Arctic power, Russia is interested in maintaining stability and peace in the Arctic region. This aim is enshrined in the concept of the foreign policy of the Russian Federation and other framework documents. It's our priority, despite any oscillations in the political situation. We are ready to maintain dialogue with everyone who is ready for constructive interaction in the Arctic region and to resolve the issues in the polar region. The cooperation with foreign states that is developed in the Arctic is not against any other states.
Its target is the sustainable economic development, the improvement of life of the North, and concerns about the indigenous peoples. All those who are interested in the Arctic are referred to experts rather than just fan lovers. They are aware of the fact that the attempts to blame Russia for this is unbiased. The development of the Arctic region is our legitimate right. The Russian infrastructure beyond the polar circle, including the military one, has long existed consistent with the current environment and plays an important role for defense and other purposes. We see that the bloc-associated discipline, or major, in fact, it's the command and administration of the NATO, and I refer to all our NATO states, continue to build up its military presence, engaging the armed forces from extra-regional countries. Many drills are being taken, including against the false actor, and we know that it is Russia. So I think that the one who is to blame for all these actions are the Europeans and the Western countries themselves. And I believe that it has nothing to do with Russia and China. It's not just a geographic part of Russia, but an integral part of the cultural identity of our citizens. It's a home to indigenous peoples of Russia who explored the polar circle region. And very soon we will have another occasion to remember about that. We celebrate the Arctic Day on the 28th of February. Russia supports the development of Arctic region, concerns about the well-being of its citizens and the environment. So any attempts to impede that process are doomed to a failure. And let me continue the Munich topic, if you don't mind, because out of the pocket we are now witnessing debates on the Navalny case. Although it seems that there is an international mechanism, this is both bilateral cooperation and law enforcement authorities and international organizations who for all these years have been exploring and studying and analyzing the same cases, trying to find some information. But they don't need it because there is the Munich Conference, Security Conference, which is used for that purposes. We've seen a lot, but still raise our eyebrows. With the Skripal's cases and the same stories on the Navalny poisoning on the 16th of February, the court, which deals with the facts and chemical formulas, the whole world has seen another anti-Russia narrative about the case of Navalny, who was accused of fraudster and then blamed for the spread of terrorism, in addition to insinuations and allegations of the so-called poisoning by the Novichok poison. 2 years after, we are facing another accusation, but this time of the poison, of the frog poison. To all those who is not following the Skripal case, I think this would sound weird and awkward. Because it's unbelievable that the serious experts would publicly flare up tensions in order to draw attention to the Munich conference. But let me remind you that there was the Skripal's code, there were lies. There was a lot of evidence near the lake where the Skripals was sitting. And so it's all one and the same story. This is the invention of the information agenda with such bright traps to attract attention of just the common citizens. They are referring to some chemicals, formulas, labs, analysis, OPCW. It's all this is the concern of the experts. And the Western countries are right now trying to engage all other common people. And it's simple here. The authors of these scenarios, yet 2 of them, bet on triggering another primitive anti-Russia anti-Russian narrative. In order to flare up the anti-Russian narrative at the Munich conference. But their fantasies and their delirious mind conceal a history-long experience of the British colonizers. And this expels just surprise. And we need to offer a plausible explanation. But right now we see that this Russophobic campaign is beyond any reason. And we have already mentioned it during this briefing. We hope that these states, the request of the OPCW, will be responded in an adequate manner. Let me recall you that the Russian Federation for many years has been waiting for the response from the UK on the outstanding issues on the Skripal's cases. For example, in September 2018, Foreign Office informed our embassy about the denial of our request submitted by the Prosecutor General's office, request for legal assistance. And since the provocation, and that's how we view it, Salisbury provocation, the embassy of the Russian Federation in London sent over 60 diplomatic notes to the Home Ministry of the UK. 60 requests have been sent. And I cited you the figures that are based not on the comments or briefings or some messages or social posts. These are official requests to the Home Office of the United Kingdom to submit any information on this regard. So these, our requests, I would call them so, because they were very substantial documents. We showed our intention to cooperate and engage on this topic. Many of the questions we raised have not been responded yet. On some points we were just brushed off. The same situation with the previous scenario with Mr. Navalny. Our numerous requests to the countries complicit of this provocation, as well as the technical secretariat of the OPWC, sent by the Prosecutor Generals and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia under Article 9 of the PCW, and they were submitted under the legal assistance request under the European Convention 1959. They were not responded, all of them. Likewise, the principal question on whereabouts and how, beyond the territory of Russia, the biomaterials of Navalny ended up in having the traces of the substance found by the German chemists, unknown specialists from France, Sweden, which were studied by two relevant labs selected by the OPWC Technical Secretariat, whose flag is concealed. And I wonder, and I think the whole world is wondering, because we're hearing a lot of things about this case, questions to the answers to the original questions. But that's not the case. Now these are frogs who help the West.